I'm an agent of chaos. Oh, and you know the thing about chaos? It's fair.
Ah, yes.
Louie.
This quiet yet seemingly deranged little Hakatation quickly became one of the most intriguing Nintendo characters of all time to me, as well as one of my personal favorites. I never thought I'd be saying that about someone from a Pikmin game of all things, games where you're just collecting a bunch of stuff with cute little plant men, but Louie really does stand out to me. So let's take a look at everything Louie's been through in the Pikmin series. I do want to give a quick spoiler warning to those who haven't completed the main story parts in Pikmin 4, because this video will go into pretty heavy spoiler territory in those regards, so feel free to come back to this video after getting to that point in the game if you don't want to get spoiled right now. So for starters, Louie's name comes from the same origin as Olimar's, being based on Luigi of the Mario Brother duo, while Olimar is of course based on Mario. This is further adapted into Louie's design, with him being taller than Olimar and sporting a more oval-shaped head as compared to Olimar's more circular-shaped one, and that's kind of like how Mario and Luigi's head shapes are. But that's just about where it ends between Louie and Luigi's similarities, because personality-wise, yeah, I'd say Louie is more closely resembles Wario, just a lot less boisterous. Not a whole lot is known about Louie's life prior to Pikmin though. The most info given to us at the moment is he grew up around his grandmother, but also is confirmed to have a dad and an aunt around. The emails sent to the player in Pikmin 2 gives the occasional detail about Louie's home life via his grandmother. About how much bugs loved Louie when he was younger, yet he would always eat a ton of them, as well as Pikmin carrots. She'd even send bug-related food in her mail to Louie so he'd have more to eat while on the Pikmin planet, aka PNF 404. His dad is briefly mentioned in an email from his Nana where she simply encourages Louie to visit his father. As for the aunt, oddly enough, she's mentioned in an email from the president where he says Louie's aunt sent the company some cookies. Although not present during the events of Pikmin 1, Louie was hired by Hakatate Fright during Olimar's first adventure on PNF 404. His first mission was to deliver a horde of golden Pikmin carrots, around 10,000 Hakatation Pokos worth to be exact. Upon returning from his mission, Louie told Hakatate Fright's president he was attacked by a giant space bunny who ate all the carrots, forcing the president to take out a massive loan from some sketchy characters and putting the entire company in huge debt. In reality, it was Louie who ate all the carrots because he couldn't overcome his powerful hunger/food obsession, so he lied to the president to save his own ass. This is what I mean when I say Louie and Luigi are almost nothing alike personality-wise. After Captain Olimar fixes his SS Dolphin, he returns to Hakatate where he immediately learns of Louie's quote-unquote incident, leading to his entire ship getting repossessed and the company, of course, still in debt. Luckily, another ship on the lot picks up one of the treasures Olimar brought back from PNF 404 and deduces it's worth 100 Pokos, which slightly lowers the company debt to 10k on the dot. Realizing more treasure could be scattered on the planet, the president tasks Louie and Olimar to go back there to get enough treasure and repay the company debt. Look, I understand why Olimar had to go back there since he's already vaguely familiar with the planet's territory, but the fact that he had to go back before seeing his family, it must have sucked ass. All of this is Louie's fault. All of it. It's still crazy to me how Olimar never really found out about it though. At least I don't think he did. Part of me thinks Olimar would probably actually forgive him too, since he's just so naturally kind-hearted. Louie may have screwed Olimar out of seeing his family, but at least it's thanks to Louie, us Nintendo fans got to experience a classic like Pikmin 2. Throughout their journey on PNF 404, Olimar and Louie would experience new parts of the planet for the first time, including new monsters and various caves underground. Caves in particular usually having the most treasure to them. Most of the treasure being real-life objects humans would see or use on Earth 2 in real life. Pikmin 2 was where the Pikmin planet was essentially confirmed to be Earth through the treasure designs, or at the very least made it much easier to tell it's Earth than the first game did. Once the two men collect enough treasure to be worth 10,000 Pokos, their ship will automatically call them back to the base, allowing them to finally go home. Only problem is, Olimar accidentally leaves Louie behind, where we get to see some of Louie's solo adventures on PNF 404 during the credits. Funny enough, it looks like he's actually having a pretty good time just vibing down there. Olimar's blunder here ended up being a double-edged sword of sorts, in the sense that it's a pain that Olimar has to go back to PNF 404 again to rescue Louie and, deal with monsters again, but Louie kind of found sanctuary. All the main enemies there, he loves to prepare and eat them in various different ways. All of his Picklepedia entries about the different creatures read like instructions you'd find in a cookbook. The way some of these are worded are just really funny too. For those who read manga, it gives off the same energy as whenever an author will give a random little comment about what went on in their life while working on the new chapter. I got bit by a cat, so I bit it back and it felt good. That kind of thing, you know what I mean? Upon returning to PNF 404, Olimar, now with the president as backup, up are in search of not only Louie, but even more treasure. But of course, Louie needs to be the priority. The little rascal is located in a specific cave called the Dream Den, a cave in the Wistful Wild area that's 14 floors long. When they reach the final floor, they find Louie in the dead center sitting atop a bunch of treasure. However, once they get too close to Louie, the deadly monster known as the Titan Dweevil emerges from underground, with all the treasure and Louie still on top of its main body. This boss will use all the treasure as different elemental weapons like fire, water, electricity, and poison. All the while, Louie stays up there until the Titan is defeated. Because there isn't enough room in the ship's seat with the president being there now, a passed out Louie is taken to the ship's cargo hold with the rest of the treasure, where the ship's treasure hoard dubs Louie the King of Bugs, worth 10 Pokos, implying Louie may have actually been controlling the Titan Dweevil the whole time, perhaps as a way to keep Olimar and the president away from him so he can live on PNF 404 and enjoy all the new foods it has to offer. Or maybe he just wanted to eat the Titan Dweevil all for himself and didn't want to share any with Olimar and the president. But I'm leaning more towards the idea of Louie controlling it, which I'll get into more later. Both Olimar and Louie make returns in Pikmin 3 as well, only this time their roles are more sidelined to give the spotlight to the Copite crew of Alf, Brittany, and Charlie. Because of how bad the Hakatate Fright president is with money, Olimar and Louie are once again sent back to PNF 404 to repurchase the HS Dolphin and repay a second debt that the president racked up. Well, at least Louie was able to keep his hands clean with the company this time around. During this new search for treasure, Louie can be seen throughout some of Olimar's video logs explaining different aspects of PNF 404. Most of Louie's screen time is him being chased around by some enemies though. These are some of my favorite Louie scenes, by the way. The way Olimar is just explaining things so seriously, then we just quickly jump cut to Louie running around like a freak. It's so good. Louie is encountered 2 different times in Pikmin 3's main plot. He's first found after the Copite squad defeats a creature known as the Scornet Maestro, where they take him back to their ship, assuming he's Olimar. But their transmission signal got mixed up, likely due to Louie also being a Hakatation. For a while, Louie is just asleep on the ship. However, thinking he'd been kidnapped by the Copites rather than saved by them, he wakes up before them, lands their ship in the Garden of Hope region, steals all of their food supply, and makes a run for it. Oh, he also blows up a wall on the way, which allows the main crew to explore more of the area. Louie actually has his own little video log after he hightails it out of there too, further explaining his mindset about how he thought he'd been kidnapped and not saved. Though I guess stealing the juice was to add insult to injury as well as fuel Louie's biggest personality flaw, that being food is more important than the lives of others. His video log ends up cutting off abruptly when he looks like he's about to be taken hostage by some kind of giant creature in the background. This creature being the Quaggled Meyerclops. Defeating this creature allows the Copite crew to apprehend Louie a second time, only now they're much more cautious because of their first experience with him, so they decide to tie him up as a way to prevent him from causing any more ruckus. Even in this now semi-hostage situation state, all this guy can think about is food. It's actually impressive at that point. From this point on, until Olimar is rescued from the Plasm Wraith monster, Louie is sidelined once again, making another brief appearance behind Olimar yelling more about food before the Copite crew offers to give them a ride back to Hakatate. Funny enough, according to Alf's notes at the end, Louie was apparently left behind a second time, but they don't even bother turning back for him, thinking he'll just be fine on his own. However, Pikmin 3 Deluxe possibly retcons this in the side story mode, Olimar's comeback, where the two of them have to repair the Hakatate ship to get back home. So that one's a little bit weird. Louie does appear in Pikmin 4, which was something I expected even before, seeing him in there with my own 2 eyes. What I didn't expect was him kind of serving as more of the central antagonist this time around. I mean, yeah, the whole debt problem was his fault in Pikmin 2, but it didn't give me the same feeling because he's playable in that game and is having to work towards fixing his blunder for the entire first part of the story. Pikmin 4 feels like he's on some of his worst behavior in the series so far. And yet, I still love this little freak. Louie doesn't appear at all until Olimar is cured from his leafling state from the rescue corpse. Briefly seen during the end credits at night wandering around the planet and making Olimar's dog Moss his pet now. Louie presumably being here in the first place by Hakatate Fright as a means of rescuing Olimar. Quickly want to mention that after the first credits roll, Olimar and the rescue corpse are forced to go back to PNF 404 because of Ochi's leafified tail, something that gradually happens throughout the game due to being exposed to its atmosphere for so long. Olimar explains that anyone with a leaf like that as part of their body cannot leave the planet without experiencing scary symptoms. The same thing happened with his dog Moss when he tried to leave before. So the rescue corps has to now find a group of 3 specific Copites, one of them being a renowned vet, in hopes she can figure out how to cure Ochi. One of the crew members is a guy named York, who's actually confirmed to be Alf's older brother. I felt like I need to explain this bit of the plot because this is where Louie begins to directly interfere with the rescue corps plans. In the 5th area of the game, Louie's found right at the beginning with Moss holding York and running away from the main character. Finding him again at his specific cave, Olimar will try to get his attention, but Louie won't even listen. This is followed by Louie attempting to turn York into a Leafling, but failing and initiating a Dandori battle similar to the Leafling version of Olimar's. For the others who have gotten to that point in the game by now, were you also shocked by how much smarter Louie's AI was compared to Olimar's? It's kind of insane, the difficulty spike there. The Olimar Dandori battles felt like child's play compared to Louie's. Every now and then, Louie will make comments about how this whole ordeal is inconvenient and he just wants to be left alone, but also realizes that he needs to win for that to happen. Beating him will allow you to rescue York, but Louie just runs off with Moss again. Rescuing York, as well as the second member of the Copite crew, Dobbs, the rescued corpse will be informed of how Louie stole all of their food supply, similarly to what happened with Pikmin 3. But the case of 3 felt at least a bit more justified since Louie thought he'd been kidnapped by who he considered a threat. Pikmin 4's case just seems to imply he went out of his way to screw these people over because calming his own hunger was more important, regardless of how poorly the Copites would be affected by this physically. We also learned the reason York wasn't turned into a Leafling was because he'd been consuming juice made from the glow sap to stay alive, which counteracts the leafifying effects. Louie is found again in the final area of the game, the Primordial Thicket, where he's now holding Nell the vet hostage and tries to turn her into a Leafling as well, resulting in another Dandori battle to decide her fate. Shocked by this second defeat, Louie frantically runs off on his own without Moss this time around, allowing Olimar to gain control over Moss again. Nell informs everyone that the only way to cure Ochi is to make glow sap medicine mixed with the cells of another space dog that doesn't have a leafified tail like Ochi or Moss. Luckily, the corpse was able to find a log from Louie referencing another giant dog who had apparently been carrying Nell before Louie found her. My guess is since her group was the one with all the yummy juice, perhaps Louie wanted to turn them into Leaflings so they could just keep gathering food for him the same way Moss could. With Leaflings becoming obsessed with Dandori after transforming, it would be really easy to get this done for him. There's also the benefit of the doubt possibility that Louie did this as some twisted form of protection for Nell/York, since Olimar said becoming a Leafling can put a withered person back into top physical shape. Even before chasing down Louie for the final time, and Nell wanted the crew to bring Louie back as peacefully as possible because although she thinks he's strange, she did appreciate him looking after her in his own way. Still, a Leafling wouldn't be able to leave PNF 404's atmosphere, so if Louie had no intention of turning anyone back, he essentially keeps these people trapped here against their will if they were to become leafified. Returning to the Primordial Thicket will unlock a secret cave that Louie attempts to take refuge in, hoping to bide enough time in there to the point where the others will just give up and go home now. He also claims he was able to tame this unknown dog creature. That specific blurb there about him taming the dog seems to further back up the idea of Louie controlling the Titan Dweeble in Pikmin 2. With the amount of similarities these two games have, with the caves returning, no day limit, and Louie being a major force in this game's plot, it seems all the more likely that theory from Pikmin 2 is indeed true now. The cave he hides out in is a 20-floor boss-rich cave dubbed the Cavern for a King. Every now and then, Louie will appear at the start of a sub-level, continuing to run away from the MC. It's not until the final floor where he's cornered and resorts to his final playing card, riding atop his new space dog companion, the ancient Sirehound, a creature that's said to be the core ancestor to all the other space dog species. This thing is quite the threat, sporting 5 different faces, some of which factor in elemental-based attacks like the Titan Dweeble that requires certain Pikmin types to work around. Insane battle theme too, by the way. I didn't expect Pikmin of all games to go so heavy with the guitar for a battle theme. It sounded like it could have been used for Paper Mario the Origami King. Defeating the Sirehound will result in it running away while leaving behind its giant dog collar and Louie, allowing the corpse to use the fur from the collar to cure Ochi and bring Louie back to the rescue base to prevent any further troubles. At this point, you can actually talk to Louie to yourself back at the rescue base, where he tells you he kinda wants to live on PNF 404 now and will give you side quests for raw material that involve killing a specific amount of a certain enemy, whether it be a dwarf bulborb, yellow wollywog, what have you. He just wants to make food out of them. Louie will have his own Piclopedia entries here, just like he did in Pikmin 2 as well, with the entries giving off the same energy as 2, only talking about what creatures he can or can't eat. Louie really is an interesting character, isn't he? Yeah, he causes trouble, but at the same time, he's kind of an enigma. You never really know what he's thinking or what he's going to do next. Like, some of the things he's doing, is it like inherently bad? Is he truly a bad person, or is it his hunger that's to blame? Perhaps if food wasn't such a big factor in the Pikmin games, Louie wouldn't cause as many issues. But I like how this adds to the idea of Louie being the ultimate predator of sorts in the Pikmin world, because when you really think about it, are enemies like Bulborbs truly evil, or are they just acting off of an animal instinct like other animals in the real world do? They simply eat Pikmin because that's what keeps them alive. So when you add someone like Louie into the mix, who seems to have eaten or controlled every kind of major predator so far in the planet's ecosystem, that kind of makes him the ultimate force to be reckoned with, huh? I'd say I'd be lying if I didn't want to see him just go full good guy and be on Olimar's side all the time again. He's definitely funnier when he's he's acting like a buffoon and causing trouble, but I'm glad he seems to have calmed down after the Sire Hound's defeat. Perhaps he'll be able to find his happiness here after all without having to mess with other castaways. That is if he can figure out a workaround to breathe the planet's oxygen for long enough and not die. Or he'll just stay calm forever and not steal all your food if you like and subscribe right now. I'm glad we could work that out, Lou. Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye.